Hi, welcome back to Sacred Significance. I am your host, Dr. Veronica Cochran. Thank you so much for joining me for this very special feature. Now, I've been talking a lot about beliefs and helping us understand that beliefs are these invisible blueprints. And what can we really do to rewrite them, to rebuild them so that you and I can experience a different reality? So today I have with me a very special guest, one of my most favorite people on the planet. I have with me my daughter Alexis. And if you have been with me anytime, you know I talk about Alexis a lot. She is what you would call the summit of a creative in that she has graphic intelligence. She creates content. She writes. She's a prolific writer and author. And there's just so many beautiful sides to Alexis. But I wanted to have this conversation with Alexis because she represents the voice of a next generation and she's raising a daughter around these same principles. So don't miss this episode where we speak with Alexis about beliefs as blueprints. Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us for this very special feature. I have with me my incredible guest, my daughter, which I am incredibly proud to have sitting with me on this couch to talk to you today. So help me welcome Alexis, the Sacred Significance. Alexis, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so I know this is one of those things, right? We've done so many things together. Like oh my gosh, we've been in business together for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then to that, we actually did a thing by way of virtual where we had this sister thing we did. What was it called?
I don't even remember. That was
it Deborah Shade? And we were
doing this with this. No, Deborah Shade. That was before me.
That was so Deborah Shade was my first kind of women in ministry kind of thing. I wrote a book when I was going through my master's in theology, and I wrote this thesis around women being in the ministry and why.
And I still had the book.
Yes, and why that was such a big deal for me to write about as a woman called to the ministry, but also having a young daughter and wanting to leave that somewhere in the writing. So you did take that book and play around with the mechanics of it, but man, I can't remember what we did, but we did something virtually. There was something.
No, it was one of those live stream things.
We did. Anyway, so we've been around the block in a lot of ways, but I wanted to have this conversation with you, Alexis, for a lot of reasons. One, I've known you for a while, and now we have Lady Eden, right? And Eden is, for those of you that know me, I'm a proud Mimi, and you've blessed me with 3 beautiful grandchildren, and Eden is the oldest, and Eden is 8. And as we're talking about beliefs, I think this is such a significant conversation to have about you, but also about how do we ensure that Eden has the jurisdiction to go where she wants to go, right? If we're talking about beliefs and our belief system being, kind of where the boundary is set, the perimeter is set by way of what we believe, and then those beliefs create expectations and we participate in that. So I wanted to ask you, I think you're a prolific mother, and I think it's such an important topic for you, for your generation, but also for the generation that you're raising. Like, how are you helping Eden? How are we ensuring that that maybe Eden has the right tools around really building a strong belief system? How are you as a mom doing that? And then, keeping in mind that we're navigating our own belief system at the same time.
Right. I mean, and I think that's true, right? Because I think for me, and I think a lot of mothers end up saying that, right? Your children, they bring something out of you, right? You begin to learn yourself, right? It's such a way that golly, is it a reflection, right? Of all of those deep-seated beliefs, even the ones that maybe you weren't as aware of, right? And so I think for me with Eden, right, I like to say that was the time I found my voice, right? Because I know it kind of came out of the blue. I started writing the poetry. Well, I've always written, right? And I know you guys know that. But I started writing the performance poetry. And that was kind of a turning point. I know everybody's kind of like, what? Right? And so, right. But yeah, so I started that with just kind of excavating around that postpartum phase, all of that. And so I think for me, with the question that you're asking, it it had to start with me, right? Like the way I encourage Eden to believe in herself, I have to, kind of unravel those things that limited my own belief in myself. And you don't realize all of them, right? I mean, I was aware of some, right? Like comparison is a big thing for me, having such a prolific mother.
Yeah, here we go.
Right. Well, no.
Okay.
No, I mean, growing up with like you, and then I have Ian, right, who's the entertainer, and I've always been soft spoken, right, or at least I'm a little bit less so these days, but but quieter in comparison, right? So
I get it. Yep.
kind of like I said, so having Eden, I think I discovered a different impact of my voice, right? So with her, I think I am working hard to ensure that my messages to her are not, not creating, limitations, right?
Good, very good.
Whether that be criticism or judgment or, because we all have expectations, and for children, I think, those expectations become guidelines. But
Centric.
right. So with Eden, I'm learning to kind of navigate the space between expectation and flow and expectation and flow. And so I do think as I'm being really intentional with how I am raising her and nurturing her, right, that a large part of that is just the mental piece, right? The her belief in herself, right? Like I don't want her to have that limitation, right? Which, that fear of trying things because she wants to be good at things, because those expectations. I mean, I do have high expectations of her.
Of course, as I know. Mm-hmm.
But I'm also learning to, like I said, navigate that.
That's good. So do you think, because I think you raised something really important. I think there are these junctures in our life, right, where we get feedback, right? And the feedback sometimes in the form of somebody else. And we see these little mirror impressions of ourselves, and we can hear our verbiage in the voice of another person. I wonder if, is it possible that, I think Eden, just by her own presence, mandates we're all doing the right work. Because if not, we're giving her a message we ourselves are not living. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And that by itself, what we learned in the core messages season is that we absorb feelings that aren't necessarily factual. So we could be telling her a fact, right? Mm-hmm. But the feelings she would absorb through our own fear, our own anxiety, our own we can't do it syndromes would speak louder, do you think, to her, right? Than the
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it forces, something about children really forces you back in the mirror. Mm-hmm. I think about my own life with raising you and Ian, and I think it was for me, you'd like to think you're grown when you have kids, but you realize when you have kids, you need to hurry up and grow up, right? Because you can clearly see where you've got some gaps in your own operation system. So I think that kids gift us with that. I often tell Eden, and I said it jokingly, I said, Eden, you made me a Mimi. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, when you think about it, right, it is the child that makes the mother the mother. It's the child that makes the grandmother a grandmother. But I say all that to say we get an opportunity to have another layer of our identity, really lifted, right? And like shaped really well through the people we get to do life with. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, as much as I said, having children, you get that reflection of yourself. I think I'm also like able to see myself a lot more clearly because they have so many facets of you, right? And in that I can say I have I've learned to have more compassion for myself, more grace.
Yay!
I know you know this, right?
I love this part.
But so that, like I said, it's just as necessary as all of the unraveling. And so you're right.
It is. One of the things I talked about in, I don't know, I want to say it was episode 5 of this season, was really around when our expectations don't map to our beliefs. So there are times our expectation produces an anticipation, right? So whatever we're believing, it produces an expectation. So if I say, hey, I'm not smart, then the expectation is I won't do well in school, or I won't test well, or whatever. So you can see those kind of crop together. That's a united operating system. But there are times when our expectation is radically different from what we say we believe, right? So I could say, I believe God loves me. I believe God will, move on my behalf. And then I'm expecting it not to work out, or I'm expecting to have to figure it out on my own. So there are times we don't have this kind of, congruence. And what I said in the teaching, I think is so important, is both of them really facilitate two things. One is we either have to figure out how to update or upskill our beliefs to support a better expectation for our life, or we owe ourselves compassion, because there's two narratives. There's the emotional residue that is not allowing us to expect something good. And then there's the desire, the conviction, the belief I'm telling myself I believe. And those stories don't merge in the middle. So whether you're deciding, hey, look, I want a different reality, so I need to believe something different, or whether you're realizing, man, there's a real conflict here. I'm saying I believe one thing, but I don't. My expectation is that it's not going to work out for me. So that really mandates we operate with compassion. And we're not always good at being compassionate to ourselves, right? To not look with judgment and not look with ridicule and not have the voice of, see, there you go again, but just, so what does compassionate care or compassionate, the ability to look at yourself through the lens of compassion, what does that look like, Alexis?
I mean, I think it starts with really understanding, right, how you're wired, right? That self-knowledge piece that you spoken to me often about. But I think what's interesting is I can remember, obviously this is now decades ago, when I was struggling in math, right? And you had me write that confession down, right?
I did.
And it was full blown, right? It was
serious confession.
It was. It addressed every little nuance of maybe where I would have had any inkling of self-doubt. And so I can still hear the confession, right, to this day. And so even when I'm listening to Eden, right, and she's expressing how she may be feeling overwhelmed with learning something new or grasping a new concept in class, I can see, younger me, right? And I can see her, and I can see how easy it was. It was so much easier, right, to give compassion to other people, especially to a child, right?
Yes.
They can melt your heart in those moments, because you want nothing more than for them to believe in themselves, right? And to, go so much further than you did, right? To not have all the unraveling to do that you realize you have to do. And so I think, so when I see her, I see me, even me at this age, right? And I can look at myself and remind myself to give myself that compassion. There are moments it's easy and there are moments it is not, because I am type A. I am a perfectionist. I am, all of these things that can lend themselves to being someone who's very task oriented. I like to think of myself as self-driven. There are moments I am not, if I if I feel like I'm falling short in any way. But so the compassion thing, I'm learning, but I find it a bit easier as I will continue to grow in my parenting journey.
That's good. I think compassion is such an interesting word. I remember when I started talking about it in the realm of leadership, compassionate leadership, and what I believe it makes room for, right? I think compassion is the precursor to hope, right? So it just says that there is a different reality that's possible, right? So compassion just makes room for growth. It makes room for learning, and judgment doesn't do that. It condemns, right? And isolates. And so there's just withdrawal. There's just that sense of shame, through that. And it doesn't make room for growth. So I love the fact that it does begin and end with like this kind of self-understanding, right? And self-understanding doesn't have to mean A, B, C, D, right? Like I get myself in that, maybe progressive way, but it does mean I get myself enough to know this isn't my final place, right? So I understand that this is part of my unveiling, this is part of my unfolding. So it doesn't have to mean when I say like I understand myself. It doesn't mean I understand all the nuances that make me who I am, but it does mean I am aware that I am in the process of growth, that I understand. And that is, I think, a powerful gift that we could give to ourselves and to each other for sure. Okay, so if you've been listening to this dialogue between Alexis and I, we are like really chomping at the bit around this idea of beliefs and, how do we create a larger jurisdiction for ourselves so that you and I can believe for a greater reality and live in the boundary of that. And we talked at length about how our current belief system just creates more of the same, a predictability kind of index instead of a possibility driven one. So we are creating some self-studies, some courses really dedicated to helping you address this. So we're releasing a new study entitled The Habit of Being You. So if you've enjoyed the messages around core messages, if you've been listening to, this whole season about beliefs and just that they really are the underlying blueprint, the scaffolding that holds our lives together, you're probably going to want to just think about, see if it resonates in your heart, if there's an interest in you for that. The Habit of Being You will be a great next step for you. Second to that, the sacred self, which is kind of the B part of the Habit of Being You. Once we spend time really uncovering this sense of self that's habit driven, we really walk you into really being able to see and self-identify with the true self, this authentic sense of self. I think we use the word authentic, but we can't be authentic unless we really know who we are. So the sacred self is really designed to be a secondary follow-up to the Habit of Being You. So just sit with those, see if that, if it speaks to your heart. We're going to be rolling that out. So put those in your hopper for 2026. And I hope to see you at a self-study or a class soon. All right, thanks. We talk about confirmation bias. And this was a big thing for me because I didn't always understand that a belief was a neural pathway. Like I really thought beliefs were, some little thing you could erase if you wanted to, a little, it feels very fragile when you say it, right? Mm-hmm. Just, that it didn't have a lot of rigidity to it. And even though I knew habits were hard to change, I didn't think, clearly we didn't understand the science of a belief as a neural pathway. It is a groove. It is an imprint. It is something that you've believed that has been reinforced through time, attention, and emotion. And as a result, we can say, hey, I want to change this. But sometimes those changes are a little hard because it's like driving a road, the same place, right? Your wheels just fall in the rut. And I think it explains why we do a lot of things by repetition. We go the same way to the same destination. We eat the same food. We order the same thing. We have the same 5 meals Monday through Friday. So for me, this is big, this idea of confirmation bias. And I wanted to talk with you about it, Alexis, because what we've come to understand about the brain is it likes to predict outcomes. And that's how it processes so much information and does it very efficiently. It likes familiar. Mm-hmm. It likes shortcuts. It likes assumptions. And it likes to say, oh, I know exactly what you're like. So I know exactly how to treat you. I know exactly that we're going to be friends or not be friends based on, right, the shortcut. And so the thing about confirmation bias, there are 3 steps to me that were just mind blowing. One is the brain will actually point out what to pay attention to. So it actually filters for you certain things that you would pay attention to in confirmation of what you believe.
Right.
But it also helps you ignore the contradicting evidence. So don't look at that, don't look at that, only look at that. But then the third part of it is we actually act in concert with what we believe, right? So the brain wants us to act in response to the belief. So not only do we pay attention to all the data that only supports, we ignore any contradicting data, and we must act in concert with that. I think if people understood that level of neurology, like I just think it brings us to a very different understanding of a belief. It doesn't feel as flimsy. It doesn't feel as whimsical. It feels as if it's got some, like it's like embossing a necklace with the letter A, right? The A is in the gold. But I love that God left us with neuroplasticity, which is the ability for the mind to change, for the brain to change structure and function. So I said all that to say, can you think of times when maybe there was contradicting evidence to something you believed, but it was easier to pay attention to what confirmed a belief?
So I think for me, what's interesting is and self-proclaimed analytical. I overthink anything and everything, right? So what you're saying, all those three steps, right? I can see them so clearly, right? How they played out in so much of my life, right? The expectations I have for people, which not to say that they were harsh, but I tend to assume that people will feel a certain way about me, right? Before I give them a chance to get to know me, right? So then it creates, for me, I become really protective of myself, of my energy, my time, like my words. I am quiet, but I am realizing more and more that some of that comes out of, not being so sure that I feel like people are worthy of my words, right? Which, the more the more I say that out loud these days, right? That sounds incredibly arrogant. But so I can, like I said, I can certainly see how that's played out in my life and being a little bit less open to, certain friendships, relationships, like, with anybody, right? Even, from a professional standpoint, right? I am, always a one-man band. I got it. I can
What do about
sort of, right, and that's not necessary, right? It's, as a matter of fact, it is, somewhat lonely, but thankfully I am growing more and more aware of those patterns, right? And I'm more willing to, as I'm more willing to recognize them and articulate them, I find that, I'm a lot more open, right? And so those relationships, those friendships, even those initial meetings with people, I am not as tense, right? Because I'm not carrying all of the weight of, I know they're going to think this, I know they're going to say that, right? And I just, I take a deep breath and,
Where you gonna say?
No, I'm sorry. I heard, children's things play in my head all day. So I heard the Daniel Tiger thing, but that's not where I was going.
And count.
This is not take a deep breath and count to four.
Oh, okay. I get it.
I was going to say take a deep breath and do it afraid, but the song, children's things just play nonstop in my head, rent free. So
Rent free.
it was a bit of a sidebar.
It's good. I mean, it's good. I think you're spot on. I mean, I think no amount of doing this work, whether I'm creating self-studies or courses or tools for people, like I have not graduated in any of this work, right? This is like, for me, I can still see where my life has feedback for me in terms of whether it is proving or disproving what I say I believe. That's real loud and clear to me. And I do think that if we're not aware, if we're not willing to wake up, right, and like be intentionally aware, we'll miss all the cues. We'll miss that the program is running in the background, and I'm already locked into what I know will prove I'm right, right? And there's a thing about being right, that just is like, that feels good, right? I told you I was gonna be right, and so it's such a poor payoff, right, for progress, isn't it? It's a poor payoff for possibility. But man, I've lived in that where the confirmation was been like, see, told you. And always I'm a good judge of character or whatever that is, right? And so just owning that. I appreciate the humility in that. And, we do participate in what we expect. And then we give that all away as though somebody else made all that happen. And we forget that we were participating, right? With our ABCs, actions, behaviors, choices, and decisions. we were all participating. We were all in. So I just think that's profound. So, I think as a mother and as a grandmother, I want to ensure that we are creating maybe what is, maybe the greatest legacy of possibility in your children and you, and of course, Ian, and in doing that, I think it mandates that we keep working. So what I love about, Alex and I is, and we're still studying, we're still breaking open stuff, learning, we're still like unboxing, unpackaging, and sometimes it is incredibly uncomfortable, right? So one thing you said that really blessed me, I don't know, it was last year, you said, I'm so proud of you guys because you just keep learning, you just keep jumping into new things. And And I appreciate that, because I just think that if we're willing to do the work, there's tremendous reward for everybody that's a part of our lives. So I think that's good. So if you were going to say, what would be a great place like to move from this belief conversation? If we were going to have a season around X, what would the season be?
I mean, I think for me, and I guess it depends on, what language you want to use, right, for it, but it'd be something around that intuition, right, the gut instinct, however you want to phrase it, because I think that's something that in unraveling, right, these beliefs, be they true or not, right, that's the one thing that I'm realizing has really been beneficial, right, is following that intuition, trusting that, because when I look back at the moments when I've made probably the greatest strides in life, it has been just, following those moments, because they really become, for me, I'm recognizing they've been like doorways, right, out of that, that same loop, and so yeah, that's what
That would be fire. Now, let me tell you why I like that idea, because most of the Habit of Being You hobby, HOB back course, is really around, it's all about the knowns, but those knowns are installed, right? So intuition is about the unknowns, right? So when we unlayer all the conditioning and really, discover the sacred self, it is a very intuitive laying for us, because it's not in the knowns. Like everything we know about ourselves, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, is a known. Whether it's I know I'm smart, I know I'm not. I know I like English, I don't like math. I know I like people, but I don't like whatever. You know what I mean? It's all knowns. So intuition is underneath all of the layers of conditioning. It is the whisper of the unknown that is really what I would consider the bedrock of the sacred self, like what we've never known. Right? That we wouldn't even be guided into that space if we lived in the conditioning knowns. So I love that. I have a course entitled Spiritual Intelligence, because I do believe intuition is a form of intelligence, but it's not born of academia. It's not born of, a developmental process. It's a level of intelligence that is accessed far ahead of what somebody taught you. It's way what I consider back there, or up there, or down there, whatever it is. But I like it. So I have a course on spiritual intelligence. I think that we could maybe break open a little bit in the intuitive lane. I think it's intuition. I think it's inspiration. And I think it's intention. And intention should come after intuition and inspiration, right? Because, right, you know what I mean? We want to start with intention, but that means we have to make an assumption about where to begin. But intuition and inspiration tell us exactly where to begin, and then the intention is the outer growth of that. So maybe we could do something like that next. I just think it's everything is right for the taking. So maybe we'll even see if our audience has some ideas of what they'd like to hear next, maybe, or understand. So anyway, is there anything you want to ask me before we go? A question, a comment, something kind of sitting on the radar about anything, the work, not the work, the person?
I don't know. I should have had a question before.
Well, you shouldn't have had a question. Nope.
I don't know. I mean, if we pause, I can come back to the question.
You and I pause and have you think of a bunch of questions.
No, I said I can come back to the A question.
That's the A question. Okay. Well, I tell you what. I think that, man, I appreciate your authentic responses. I appreciate the depth in which you answered, the honesty. You walk with a lot of integrity, Alexis, which is why if you weren't my daughter, I'd be your best friend. Because you have this beautiful way of living life, real face up in the luminous space of truth. And sometimes that truth isn't always easy to see or hear. So I appreciate that about you. But I think you've done the topic great justice. You've given us something to think about as it relates to what we do with the children that we're rearing and stewarding around some of the same concepts, and that it keeps the work fresh for us, and so that we can be the best parents, the best meanies we can be for the generation we are bringing up. But I have loved sitting with you. We will do absolutely more of this. I know that you're coming out with your own things. I know you're on what's this thing I'm on with you? What's it called? Something.
Oh, Substack.
Substack. Yes. So Alexis is on Substack. So maybe, I mean, and you write incredible things. I try to go on there and always read and support. So if you're looking for Alexis, you can find her there. Obviously, I think she's, you're writing manuscripts and narratives and stories. And then you work for us in the content space. You work with us doing all things, everything from graphic to content creation to, I don't know, everything, social media. I don't know what you don't do, actually. So we are blessed to have you as a partner in the work we get to do. So thank you for jumping on and sitting with me today. And we'll do more of this in the not too distant future. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much for joining Alexis and I. We've had a blast chatting with you about beliefs and how that impacts the next generation. Alexis is truly one of my favorite people. So we're going to hope to have Alexis back on in the future, really talking more about the things that are more akin to what she does and who she is. And I think you'll really, really enjoy that. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to me and my featured guests in the bonus session of Sacred Significance episode. This would be episode 7 of season 3. All right. We'll see you in season 4.